Thank you for joining our session, Why Privacy is No Longer Optional. We have an amazing group of folks here who are much smarter than I am about this topic, so I'm really going to let them do a lot of the talking and just guide the conversation. But I do want to start out by saying, it felt for a while that privacy was kind of a personal preference. The original sort of roots of the internet on BBSs and such. We didn't worry as much about everything being monetized and taken and how we had to control our privacy. Now it feels like it is an infrastructure requirement for us to have privacy at the core of what we're building, especially in crypto. And so I really want to center the conversation around that. Maybe, Brittany, you want to start here. I'm just interested in sort of the last few years. What has really made privacy rise to the top of the conversation?
I feel it's really the advancement in AI and all of our data becoming exponentially more valuable than it was a few years ago. I mean, can I get a show of hands of how many people are using AI products nearly daily? Right? And how many of you are uploading data that would be considered important to you? If you're an entrepreneur, are you uploading data about your company, about your startup, IP, copyright, material non-public information, to any government officials classified information? Well, I think most people are doing that every day without thinking about it. But last week we saw Sam Altman go on TV and say, hey, if you're using ChatGPT and other OpenAI products to create your IP and copyright, guess what? It's mine too. And I'm coming for it. So just be prepared for that. So over the past many months, we've seen everyone from, the New York Times to A-list celebrities suing OpenAI because OpenAI has taken their data. But OpenAI just said, actually, we're going to be suing you to take a part of your company because you used our IP in order to create it. So this is a problem that we have not faced before, where tech companies are starting to say, whatever you created, if it gets popular enough or revenue producing enough, it's mine too, because you didn't read the terms and conditions. And if you did, the terms and conditions said everything you uploaded is mine, and now everything you've created is mine. So now that AI is a daily tool in people's lives, this could not be a more important and essential conversation.
And so, Fahmi, you guys are really focused on this on-chain privacy layer. Why is it essential that people understand the need for that?
Great question. First of all, hello, Hong Kong. It's great to be here. I think the age of Web 2.0 allowed people to introduce commerce into their everyday life. HTTPS allowed secure transactions and payments. And the large internet companies, large technology companies took advantage of that. They gave us something for free, but nothing in life is ever for free. They took our data and they monetize that data, and then they send it back to us and package it in ways that encourages us to spend money in certain ways, gamble, shop. So it consumes your life. Even doom scrolling on TikTok videos, everything is based on your interaction with that technology. And they've monetized that in a way that has made them not only extremely successful, extremely wealthy, but extremely powerful. You see that with the Clarity Act in the US, how that went from a very encouraging place where Web3 entrepreneurs felt finally there was a government in the US that recognized what they wanted to do, and now you see the incumbents protecting their interests. And for us, when you think about Web 2 was about read write, and Web 3, the blockchain, is about read write own. Midnight is taking that further by thinking about it as read, write, own, and protect. AI agents, when you introduce them into your space, have no care for you. They are programmed to monetize what you don't even know you have. And that's an important philosophy that needs to be introduced. That freedom that you think you get, that free access, comes at a cost. And we're very keen with Midnight, with our partners, to protect what rightfully is yours.
All right, so Richard, you're with a small company in the data space, but Google and companies like Meta really turn personal data into the most valuable asset on the earth. And your attention is having to figure out how do you manage personalization and privacy at the same time. Backstage, we were talking about how you guys put a lot of resource into the the sort of private and secure layer of what you do. But sort of how do we look at that balance of I want something that feels very native to me as an individual, so you have to know a lot about me, and we have a business that thrives on the ability for us to have people target you.
Yeah, look, I think when we talk about personalization and privacy, I think it's probably two sides of the same coin, to be honest. And I think the key to that coin is like user trust. So I think the key is giving the user control and transparency over the information that they have, what they decide to share, and we can build the most private services that those users can then find helpful, right? Of course. Yeah, so I think by putting the power in the user's hands and making them aware, I think they should care about it. I think Brittany mentioned AI and the proliferation of data, which is super important. And I think the more we can do that, the more we can build that user awareness, I think the better it will be for the control of their own information, right? But I think privacy by default is a standard that we absolutely aim for sure.
Just to follow up, when we think of the scale of users who are using Google products, how many of them do you think are aware that privacy is something they should pay attention to?
Again, it comes back to the point of transparency, right? We absolutely believe users should care about their data, of course, and should care about how they manage their own data. So again, all of our services are private by design. We talk about secure by design. So we give them the freedom, we give them the choice. We make those services transparent, but we make sure they're private by default.
Now, Fahmi, the sort of transparency layer of blockchains has been its superpower and its Achilles heel.
Yes.
But now we are sort of at a moment where where the opportunity really exists for us to figure out what are we comfortable disclosing. But there are a lot of OGs in the crypto space that sort of want things not to change. So what's your answer to them, which says, no, this is what makes blockchains amazing, is that everything is transparent and out there?
Yeah, when you go back to the origins of blockchain and Bitcoin, it was about removing censorship. It was around following the financial crisis and various data leaks that had happened. How do you give people ownership of their asset? So they read, write, own. How do you give them ownership of their asset, ability to have peer-to-peer transactions, borderless, without censorship? But that came at the cost of transparency. That was a compromise. Because how do you provide truth? Often you have to disclose information for the truth. And that radical transparency enabled the success of Bitcoin and other sort of chains that followed. But in the real world, that's not how it operates. Britt and I were speaking. You don't leave the front door open, leave the lights open and say, hey, everybody come and have a look. You protect that because your home is your castle, as an Englishman would say. So the same exists around your data. We believe at Midnight that you should have a choice at the application level, at the builder level. Choice between public and private. Through zero knowledge, through the tokenomics we designed, through the technology we designed, you have the ability to protect not only your data, but your metadata. The who you are, the way you are, is just as important what you do. That signals behaviors, it signals intent. We've heard many times in the crypto world, traders put on positions, and then what does everybody do? They either try and front run that, they either try and copy that and erode the alpha, or they trade against it. That's not how the real world works. You want to be able to protect sensitive information, your assets, your salary, and other things. And as and when required, selectively disclose those through smart contracts that we have built and designed at Midnight. We call that rational privacy. The ability to decide what you share, when you share it, and with whom you share it.
I think the idea of privacy by default is great. I also like the idea, though, that privacy by demand because the masses want it. And Brittany, no one seems to be more litigious and representative of the people against big technology than yourself, having waged cases against Reddit, against Instagram, against Meta. So how do we get more people to say all of our products should have a Midnight layer, should have a Google security layer, and actually say this is the decision whether I'm even going to use it?
Well, for me, it's really a digital literacy issue. Most people around the world don't really understand that when you are using most of the apps and technologies that you touch on a daily basis, that you are giving so much away. I mean, how many people have ever read the terms and conditions of an app that you use every day? Yep, I see two hands. They're probably lawyers like me. But Most people never read them because they're designed for you not to read them, so that without your explicit informed consent, all of your data can be taken from you. And that's why I'm so obsessed with not just the idea of privacy, which I believe is the most basic and fundamental digital right, that if you want to keep something to yourself, you should have the right to, but data ownership, which is the ability to actually own your data as an intangible personal property. So the way that you think about owning your house or your car, that your personally identifiable information and all data linked to that would also be something that you see as a property, and therefore you would want to protect. And that if someone were to damage it, that you would have legal recourse. So I have often helped represent millions of people around the world who have felt that their data, their property has been damaged by the way that big tech treats it. And so I think over the past decade, there has been more digital literacy around what privacy or data ownership actually means and how valuable your content and data is. And therefore, you have more of a feeling of wanting to demand respect for that and be able to own that. I think more entrepreneurs understand this more than anything. Like I mentioned earlier, the idea that you would use an AI product and then the owner of that AI product would say that everything you've ever invented is theirs instead of yours. That feels very personal. And so I think since the rise of AI over the past couple years, where it's really become an essential daily tool for everyone, we now really start to take ownership in a serious way and say, can we, and I say we as entrepreneurs working in this space and people building in this space, can we make a good enough user experience and accessibility where people around the world can have data ownership and privacy without knowing enough about technology? Do we need to make it hard, or can we make it easy? And so that's what I've really been concentrating on over the past many years, is not just legislatively can we get the lawyers and the academics and the legislators to agree with us that this is essential and that it should be illegal for this not to be provided, but for people to really be able to access these technologies and use them in an easy way, which is why I've been working with Midnight since last year to make some of the most globally used products have the rational privacy layer. We've actually, I don't know how many people here have Telegram on their phone? All right, most people, and over 1 billion people around the world use it on a monthly basis. 450 million people a day, and most people, their first ever AI agent, they use it in Telegram. So we've built a Midnight and TON layer so that Midnight is operable in Telegram, and you can run all of your AI agents where it's privacy by design and privacy by default. So you can release that agent onto your data sets and know that it's impossible, and you can prove it, that it's impossible for that data to get shared with third parties. So if you give it access to your Telegram messages, your email, whatever you need it to have access to, you know it's not going to third-party servers. It's not being shared with Sam Altman or Mark Zuckerberg. What's yours is yours, and you actually own it.
I hear that. It reminds me, for about 20 years, my bank PIN code was 771274. You guys can all take that. And it was that until I went to the bank and they said, no, you need to change your password and make it a 4-digit code. And I said, why a 4-digit? I have a 6-digit code, and I think that's more secure. And they said, people think it's easier to remember 4 numbers. And they made me change my password, so you can't use it anymore. But Richard, looking at you, I think about the idea that I can be on my Gmail, I can go to YouTube, I can watch as many videos, it knows about my subscription preferences and all of that. I can then go to Gemini and play with that, and I don't have to think twice about it because it's all within a closed ecosystem. In a world of decentralization that we exist a lot here, people are wary of that, right? But how do we sort of get past the idea that it's always going to be easier to use a Gmail than it was to use Pine or an old, email service, or to use YouTube that defines something on an obscure bulletin board or website? You guys do that really, really well. People want that convenience. Do you think there's an opportunity for us to build in privacy, cryptography into that experience?
Yeah, look, I think it's an interesting question. I think you raise a good point. Users want services ultimately to be helpful. I think that's the first thing. But then obviously privacy comes into that kind of equation as well. I'm sure one of the questions on the panel was blockchain adoption and privacy, which is, of course, Midnight is kind of at the forefront of, of course. And we hear from our enterprise customers pretty regularly that they can see the benefits of kind of public blockchain, but they could really do with kind of the privacy, particularly in those kind of regulated industries where it's kind of super important. And I think, someone also raised this, that like privacy isn't necessarily opacity, right? And it's the choice to be able to go, I'm going to choose what I share, who I share it with, and under what conditions I will share that with as well. And I think once we can kind of get to that point, I think we'll find a position where institutions will naturally step in, perhaps more to the blockchain space as well. And I think we're getting closer to that. And delighted, of course, to be supporting Midnight on that journey as well.
So as we sort of leap forward in our collective journey in blockchain, I'm wondering what each of you thinks is sort of the most important area. I mean, privacy should be sort of everywhere, but I think about agentic and how much we are giving so much to those systems. I think about our health records and those needing to be private by design. I think about our financial lives. What do we think is the use case that finally makes people sort of stand up and say, no, this has to be private no matter what because it is X? Brittany, I'll start with you.
For me, I believe that it is tools for entrepreneurs. So whether you're an artist or creative, or you're developing any sort of IP or copyright around your own startup, right now, I think that is the thing that is most at threat, because if you cannot create IP or copyright, because every time you use a tool, everything you're inventing no longer belongs to you, then that completely destroys an entire generation of creatives and builders and entrepreneurs. So for me, I believe like your actual ability to own your data in a way where you can have IP, trademark, copyright, and full ownership of that data, and rolling that out so that it's easy for a regular person to use that might not be very technically competent and doesn't know how to use advanced forms of encryption technologies or blockchain without assistance. It needs to be good UI, UX so that it's accessible by billions of people around the world. And with a few clicks of a button, you have a privacy by design product that you can roll out and use yourself, for your company, and also for your family, of course.
Fahmi, what's the use case that makes privacy top of mind?
So payments. Look, we're all governed by consumer requirements. The internet has been built for us to consume and purchase and buy. So when you think about agentic AI and these agents are going to talk to different, bypass search engines and go and speak to different shops, enterprises, how do you make sure that it doesn't go and spend money that isn't yours? How do you know it doesn't go and disclose how much assets you've got to go and spend, and that you don't get bombarded, reverse engineered? So ultimately, privacy alone is not exciting. Most people don't care for privacy, but yet we live our life based on trust. You make friendships based on trust. You go and do business with people that you trust. So when you think about payments in using agentic AI, you've also got to Brittany's point, you've got to make it almost invisible. Good technology is invisible. I would love nothing more to never get on stage again and talk about Midnight, because it powers everything else without you even knowing it. It's like the good old days when you opened the laptop and you saw those adverts and you get that Intel jingle, powered by Intel. I would love Midnight to power these solutions, but these solutions need to exist along with other tools that make it based on truth, based on protection, based on smart compliance. So it's always protecting you, whether you're engaging in the UK, the US, here in Hong Kong. And that's important. But to almost everybody here, I'd imagine they want it to be invisible so they don't even think about it, but they know they're always protected.
Richard, what's the use case?
I think for me, it's probably identity. It's probably not quite as exciting as the two that you two just shared, but I think we are, in our day-to-day lives, probably sharing more than we ever probably should be in terms of, our age, location, demographic details, and all those kind of things. So I think the underlying technology around ZK proofs, which of course Midnight are very familiar with, allows you to kind of prove a fact without disclosing those details anymore. So I think the more we can kind of shield that identity and kind of just show people what we need to show them to prove something, I think that will be a really strong use case for, ZK and privacy more broadly.
And that's a great point, actually. We already have that. We have trusted execution environments in our phone. Google Pixel, iPhone. There's a private enclave within that protects your biometrics, your payments, so whether it's Google Pay, Apple Pay. But how do you take that and speak to another environment? Again, you need a network or a privacy layer that supports that. Information exchange, identity exchange, payment exchange, IP exchange. That's where Midnight, as a permissionless blockchain, can create walled gardens that can speak to each other in a way that doesn't disclose sensitive information.
Richard, I want to end on you. My question for you is, we are seeing innovation happen at a scale and speed we've never seen before, really through the Geminis and Claudes and OpenAIs. I feel like people are rushing to put out any skunkwork project they can think of as quick as possible. They've completely ignored the idea of security and privacy. As someone who works at a software company that's done pretty well at developing software that people utilize, how essential is it that they think about these things before they ship?
Yeah, I think it's a foundational component of any product build now, privacy and security. And I think privacy should be like an invisible thing. I think in the past it's perhaps been a bit of a tax on user experience, and users perhaps felt that as well. But I think now, yeah, people need to build products with security and privacy in mind, and we talk about privacy by design that kindly Brittany referenced. Yeah, so I think that's super important. I think as long as that's top of mind, and the users can feel safe and secure in their information and where that information is, then I think it'll be a better place.
All right. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you all for your wisdom.
Thank you, guys.
We'll see you soon.